Salutations, respected viewers. I am George from Ireland. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about Iran enriching uranium, why Iran is entitled to do it, and how the world should respond. Well, first of all, for well over 25 years, certain people, particularly the Israeli government, have been accusing Iran of attempting to develop nuclear weapons, and Tehran has consistently denied ever doing so. Yes, Iran is definitely trying to develop civilian nuclear energy, as Iran is entitled to do, as dozens of countries around the world have nuclear power plants, including the United States, France, and on and on. So there were 9 years of sanctions that finally led to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action in 2015, commonly called the Iran Deal, signed off by 7 powers. I shan't list them all here. So Iran destroyed something like 98% of its enriched uranium, had restrictions on its heavy water, on centrifuges and so on, submitted to very regular inspections by the International Atomic Energy Authority. So the IAEA had dozens of inspectors in Iran, and they repeatedly confirmed that the Iranians were abiding by this to the letter. The United States, its intelligence agencies, again, repeatedly confirmed that the Iranians were sticking to the deal. In return for this, Iran's millions of dollars were unfrozen. Its assets have been frozen abroad. The sanctions were lifted, and Iran's economy bounded back, and all the rest of it. So that is that. But Iran's involved in a proxy war against Saudi Arabia, in Syria, in Yemen, and elsewhere. Qatar is too friendly with Iran, so Qatar's been suffering an embargo for 2 years, imposed by the Saudi Arabians, the UAE, Egypt, and so on. And that's that. So it's really because of non-nuclear issues that Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the United States have raised the temperature very recently. President Trump came to office. He twice signed off on extending the Iran deal, on holding off on sanctions. Now, the Republican Party have been itching to end this. Every single Republican senator voted against the Iran deal. But there we have it. As President Obama correctly said in 2015, this is the only alternative to war. And there's absolutely no need to have war against Iran. So year after year, the Israeli government has said that Iran is on the cusp of developing nuclear weapons, but somehow it never, ever happens. Why on earth should we trust Tel Aviv when they've told such flagrant lies on this very issue time after time? I remember in 1985, Shimon Peres, then the Israeli foreign minister, saying that Israel would never introduce nuclear weapons to the Middle East. There he was, lying through his teeth, knowing full well his country had introduced nuclear weapons to the Middle East several years earlier, often by stealing nuclear military technology from the United States, spying on the United States, despite the United States giving it billions of dollars, giving access to intelligence and its best weapon systems, and giving it diplomatic cover. There we are, talking about biting the hand that feeds you. So even President Trump did not allege that Iran had ever once broken the Iran deal. He said, it's because Iran is destabilizing the Middle East and they've broken it in spirit. In spirit, you can make up anything and say it's breaking it in spirit. Look how the United States was breaking it in spirit by threatening Iran even before Trump ripped up the deal. Well, if America isn't bound by the deal, neither is Iran. The other signatories to it, the European Union, Germany, the United Kingdom, France, China, and Russia, they all said, no, let's stick to this. We have a good chance of peace. But no, it was American unilateralism again, admittedly encouraged by the unholy alliance of Saudi Arabia and Israel, 2 countries which are at each other's throats, but they share a common enemy in the shape of Iran. So I know Iran's political system is unattractive and its human rights record is bad, but it compares very favorably to Saudi Arabia. In Iran, we've been able to drive all the time, we've been able to vote and things like that. It has elections that government candidates sometimes lose and things like that. Women have greater freedom there. People are allowed to worship in other religions. Even the Jewish community has got guaranteed representation in the Majlis. That's the parliament. So it definitely wins the beauty contest vis-a-vis Saudi Arabia. So Trump was ending this deal over behavior which was unrelated to the Iran deal. The JCPOA was not covered by the terms of that. There was absolutely no grounds for tearing up this deal. So in Yemen and Syria and so on, they're fighting, and that's that. So anyway, there is absolutely no justification for war, and Two oil tankers off the coast of the UAE were damaged, Saudi Arabian oil tankers. Iran is being accused of doing that. I've no idea whether they did that or not. And people in the West don't give Iran credit. The reason ISIS has been defeated in Iraq and Syria is because of the Iranian army, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, as well as the Russian Air Force. We ought to be thanking Iran for that, not condemning them. However distasteful President Assad's government is, that is the lawful government of Syria, and I know that his army's conduct has not been good at all, but the alternative was ISIS, which was far more savage. So the US is beginning its military build-up. They're beating the drums of war yet again. So I suppose the timing is significant. Trump's trade war against China is going nowhere. He hasn't built a yard of that wall, and on. And then the Dow Jones is down. So his agenda is running into the sand. So a short, victorious little war. He knows that raining bombs on a Muslim country will play well amongst the press, and white supremacists, bigots, Islamophobes will like it if they see Muslim civilians being slaughtered. That's tough. So these people will have to pay the price for Trump's re-election campaign. But before the United States embarks on another ill-considered military venture in the Middle East, it will be worth Washington considering just how badly wrong this could go for them. This is not Iraq. Iran is 3 times the population of Iraq, 3 times the landmass of Iraq, much more mountainous, and has normal relations or even cordial relations with all her neighbors, with Iraq, with Georgia, with Azerbaijan, with Uzbekistan, with Turkmenistan, with Afghanistan and Pakistan, can trade with all of them. Now, the sanctions are hurting Iran. The Iranian rial has lost a lot of value. There's certain technologies that find difficult to get in, and indeed people are dying from lack of medicine. So they can get some of these through third countries. They have a good relationship with China, notably, and they'll work in close concert with her and other countries. So America's victims can also form a coalition of the willing: Venezuela, China, Russia, Iran, and so on. Anyway, it took 9 years of sanctions to get to the last Iran deal. It'll take many more to get to the next one. Why on earth would the Islamic Republic of Iran trust the Trump administration when Trump has told thousands upon thousands of proven lies on the record since becoming president? And it's countries make agreements, not presidents. And international diplomacy works on the assumption that an incoming president will honor the agreements of the outgoing president and not just tear them up on a whim. So there was Trump ruling by fiat. So yes, sanctions have been ratcheted up, and there is inflation. Investment is down. The Iranians suffered so much in the 1980s, and perhaps they can tough it out. They've got a larger diaspora abroad. For some years, there was a proxy war between them and the Israelis. Occasionally, there were explosions in Iranian nuclear facilities. Sometimes Israeli diplomats abroad were assassinated. So the Iranians and the Israelis were playing this tournament of shadows. How will it end? I'm not sure. Now, the Iranians have started enriching more uranium. And why shouldn't they? Because this nuclear restriction deal is over. It has been ended by the United States. So they're not subject to any restrictions. They're not bound by the rules, as the United States is not bound by the rules, because they can use this for civilian nuclear energy. Why not go for military nuclear power? Why not go for a nuclear bomb? They promised not to do before. Well, all the bets are off because Washington ripped up the agreement. And anyway, it's Israel has a nuclear bomb and Iran does not. Iran is a member, signed up to the non-proliferation agreement. Israel is not. Iran told the truth about its nuclear weapon status, that it doesn't have nuclear arms. Israel refuses to tell the truth about its nuclear weapon status even now, even though the dogs in the street know that's the case. Mordechai Vanunu, an Israeli nuclear weapons technician, courageously went to the Times newspaper way back in 1987 with photos he'd secretly taken at Dimona, Israel's underground nuclear weapons facility, and revealed to the world that the state of Israel possessed nuclear arms. Israelis say, well, we need this for self-preservation. That argument bites back. The Iranians can advance that same argument, saying the Zionists have got their nukes pointed at us. Well, why shouldn't they use them? Only way to stop them is having our nuclear weapons pointed at them. So that's that. So who's really the aggressor here? We're told that Iran is causing trouble in the Middle East by saving Iraq, by saving Syria, by saving Lebanon, by helping the Palestinians, all of these sovereign states. Now, Israel illegally occupies much of Palestine, illegally occupies some of Lebanon, and illegally occupies the Golan Heights of Syria. Iran, by contrast, doesn't occupy an inch of foreign territory, though yes, it is helping the Houthi rebels. A bit hypocritical to lambast them for that, as many other countries in the region are helping insurgencies in other countries. I would like them to disengage from Yemen. I don't approve of what they're doing in Yemen. Noticeably, the Yemeni government, aided by the Saudi Arabians, have deliberately killed thousands of civilians in Yemen as well. So, airstrikes are probably not going to work because the Iranians have dispersed their nuclear program all over the country. You wouldn't have much of an element of surprise. Destroy what you can. Quite a few planes get shot down without destroying their nuclear weapons program. You might, if they had it at all, you might degrade it, or their civilian nuclear energy program. That's that. So President Rouhani has said, well, they're prepared for the worst. And remember, this deal was so restrictive. There was a massive concessions made to the United States that many Iranians said the deal ought to be rejected, and some of them even threatened government officials with death for what they felt was a capitulation to Uncle Sam. So I'm very worried about this. And I see how Trump has reneged on his promises. A lot of people overlooked his sex crimes, his financial crimes, thinking he would guarantee peace. Remember how he vowed to instantly withdraw from Iraq, from Syria, from Afghanistan, and in fact he's got more deeply entrenched. So I suppose the warmongers, they cajoled him into staying. So there we are. Now the war profiteers do not want peace breaking out. They think that would be disastrous. They want to avoid peace at all costs. So certain invested interests in Wall Street and the Pentagon are salivating at the thought of yet more blood and gold, another completely avoidable conflict in the Middle East. And the Iranians will calculate that they need nuclear weapons because, what's common to countries being invaded by the United States over the past 35 years, like Grenada, Panama, Libya, Iraq, and, Afghanistan. None of them had nuclear weapons. If you have nuclear weapons, Uncle Sam will not dare lay a finger on you for fear that you hit back with nukes. So that's that. But there might be a new president in a year and a half, and maybe sanity will prevail. There is cause for optimism, though, as I say, some in Washington, some of the hawks are really itching to start another completely avoidable war. The American public is not really behind this. The Democrats are very cheery about it. I think even the Republicans aren't eager. Okay, there could be airstrikes, but that achieves nothing. That will infuriate the Iranians, will not actually weaken the Iranians. And the European allies are not signaling they're going to be involved. Theresa May, one of the few good things you can say about her is she has not indicated any wish to fight. Besides, the British Army is tiny, only 80,000 soldiers. Even the RAF has been cut back. Don't know what the UK was doing setting up a new military base in the Middle East. So none of the European NATO countries will take part. Of course, Israel and Saudi Arabia will because they consider Iran to be their arch enemy. But Iran has got a lot of allies. The Iraqi government, Shia dominated, is very pro-Iran. The Iranians may be able to hide some of their things in Iraq. The Syrian government is immensely indebted to the Iranians. And as I say, quite a few people in Lebanon like Iran as well. And Iran can count on the auxiliary aid of its children who are dispersed across the globe. So President Trump is distracting from domestic travails and his failure on numerous other fronts. President Trump has managed to pick rows with China, Venezuela, North Korea, Iran all at the same time, and they can help each other. They can form a coalition that are willing to resist aggression. There is not the slightest legal or moral justification for any attack upon Iran. I have previously supported military action against tyrannical regimes around the world, but in this case, I would certainly not support any military action against Iran. At the moment, nobody's even talking about regime change or ground invasion. It's not going to happen. So the United States could make the situation so much worse for itself, be mired in another forever war. The United States is just trying to extricate itself from Afghanistan with little glory and less success. Seems like the coalition talks are breaking down in Afghanistan. The US might pull out, the civil war might resume, and the Taliban might win. And therefore NATO, after almost 20 years, and about 5,000 NATO lives after 10,000 of Afghan lives have been lost, achieved absolutely zero. Be right back to square one. So let that be a salutary lesson. I think some people would have pause for thought in the United States. So I am a little bit sanguine. There is a ray of hope here. There are tens of millions of decent Americans, and even if I disagree with them on other issues, who recognize the last thing the United States needs is another catastrophic war in the Middle East. There is no reason to attack Iran. It is not threatening the United States. It is nowhere near the United States. We don't even know whether they're developing nuclear weapons or not. If you just treat them reasonably, then they would not threaten the United States and probably not even threaten Israel. Now, Israel's situation is actually safer than ever because the Saudi Arabians have a good relationship with them now. They don't give a damn about the Palestinians. Egypt is embroiled in its own travails. The Egyptian president, Fattah Sisi, he even confirmed in an interview in January that he is cooperating with the Israelis and he's authorizing Israeli airstrikes in Sinai against ISIS. Syria is obviously tearing itself apart, and it's going to take decades to recover from this civil war, and it's impacted Lebanon as well. So the Palestinians have no allies worth the name around there. The Saudi Arabians and the Israelis are regularly meeting and putting their heads together about how to counter Iran, and Saudi Arabia might even recognize Israel, as Mohammed bin Salman has apparently said behind the scenes. All right, let the Jews have a homeland, let it be Israel. He's far more concerned about what is happening across the Gulf. Saudi Arabia put these sanctions on Qatar, which did nothing against them, and they haven't worked. So the Qataris have got tons of money, and the Iranians can supply them with food and everything else they need, and more laborers. So this war could easily be avoided, but we have to get out in the streets and shout about it. This war, which would not defeat Iran, which would not prevent a nuclear weapons program that doesn't exist, and if it does exist, it still wouldn't prevent it. All it would do is kill tens of thousands of people for absolutely no gain, but for a few blood-sucking war profiteers.